I'm just going to speak for probably about 20 minutes or so, really, to firstly give you a little bit of a sense of the kind of role that UKTI Education plays and how we can kind of help the UK education companies more generally. But then also a few words about the edtech sector more specifically and some initiatives that we're pursuing there, which again, we hope are going to be valuable to you in how you approach the export market. So a little bit of background first of all, because I know that not all of you will know us as an organisation, or indeed will have had very much to do with us so far. Essentially, we were set up as a team as part of the British government round about 2.5 years ago now, in the summer of 2013, as part of the government's international education strategy. And the sense from the British government was that the UK had always been absolutely fantastic at encouraging students to come to the UK from countries all around the world. And indeed, the UK had actually been quite successful in terms of its export offer. But the government's view was that because the reputation of all aspects of the UK education system is so high internationally, that we were really only just scratching the surface in terms of what could be achieved. And so the team of which I'm part was set up, as I say, nearly 3 years ago now, really with a view to actually supporting the UK education sector in being more successful internationally. And this gives you a little bit of a sense on the slide of some of the kind of the key elements there. It's to try and help you deal with some of the issues that you're going to deal with as exporters internationally. We are part of the Department for Business, Innovation and Skills. We're particularly focused on what we call high value opportunities, HVOs. I mean, we will always do everything that we can to support anybody in the UK education sector to operate internationally. That's part of what we do. But essentially, there's a lot of help which is already out there from our international trade advisors who are based regionally around the UK, and also from British embassies and high commissions around the world. So any company can always get help, but we're particularly set up to focus on those high value opportunities, for example, where there's likely to be some form of system change in a government around the world, where there is a particular major change that's afoot, where perhaps one supplier is not able to fulfill that remit on their own, but needs help and support. And so really, we as a team are best placed to be able to help with those kinds of types of business. And there are some pretty ambitious targets there, as you can see. The government overall, rather than just education, really wants the UK to do more in the export space. And so we've got some pretty tough targets about how we help the education sector to do much more as a part of that target. So I'll just say a couple of words about how we're organised within the team. I mean, there are certain geographic markets around the world where there are multiple types of education opportunity. And some of those countries are listed there, around the Gulf particularly, around ASEAN, around Malaysia, and China, of course. Now, we tend to look at those specific geographic markets because, bluntly, we'd be foolish not to. There are opportunities around the school sector, around higher education, around vocational training, around education technology. So we tend to look at those markets holistically. But in addition to that, I think we'd be doing a disservice to you as the industry if we didn't take a global look at opportunities in each of the subsectors of education as well. So if you look along the bottom of the slide, we also try and look right across the world at opportunities which might be developing in countries which are not on that top list. So let's say, for example, there is a major program in, I don't know, Nigeria, where the government wants every child in Nigeria to have a tablet at school, for example, let's say. Then that's the kind of opportunity that we'll obviously be very interested in terms of helping the UK sector to approach that opportunity. And of course, at the end of the day, you know, we just want to be helpful. There will be lots of things that you will want to do as the sector where you are absolutely 100% competent to do that on your own, and you don't really need government help. But there will be times, I think, when it's quite likely that you will want the government to be at your shoulder and to help and to intervene in particular ways, and that's what we're here to do, to help you to actually access that business internationally. So how we work, well, we try to bring in as much information as we can to actually help you. We are setting up specific working groups for each subsector within education, comprised of players from within the sector, to help us to present better the UK offer. So if any of you as education technology companies would like to participate in our education technology working group, then we'd be delighted to speak to you afterwards. We're always looking for a very broad range of players who can actually help us to understand the sector. We, of course, are working all the time with international governments around the world. And again, just going back to my earlier point, just sometimes, as a government organisation, we are better placed to be able to do that than perhaps just as a supplier going in on their own. So there are times when perhaps we might get the inside track on opportunities as they're developing that might not necessarily be necessarily visible to you. But of course, it's 100% our job to make sure that you are then made aware of those opportunities. We work, of course, we're just a small team in London, probably around about a dozen people, but we work very, very closely with all our colleagues around the world. And I've already been told that some terminology that I've used on the slide there, when I say post, that means embassies, high commissions around the world. So we work very closely with our colleagues in those posts, in those embassies, but also around headquarters as well, because it can easily be the case that there are opportunities that develop that may be part of a much broader program. So, for example, I mean, we're just doing a lot of work at the moment in the oil and gas sector around education and training, but on the back of a much bigger oil and gas program being led by the UK. So these are the kind of things where education can form part of a much broader initiative. And we couldn't do this on our own, absolutely, because at the end of the day, we as government officials are here to serve you, the sector, and to help you to do more. So we need to keep up that ongoing dialogue with the education technology sector, and we're very, very keen indeed to come to shows like BET to understand the new developments, the new technologies, and to hear from you about the kind of places where you're active or where you think there are opportunities. I'll just mention one other activity that we've been up to recently. We've spent quite a bit of time actually speaking to all of our UKTI colleagues around the world to try to get to the bottom of where education technology opportunities exist globally. Now, we're obviously aware of major programs when they develop, but sometimes, you know, these are programs which grow up rather more quietly and perhaps are not necessarily on our radar. So we're now in a position where we're being able to develop a really quite comprehensive global sense of where EdTech opportunities do exist, so that we can target our resources appropriately to help you in the best possible way. And when we do discover business opportunities that we think the UK sector will be interested in being associated with or applying for, we will always post them on the UKTI website, and that's a free service, but you do need to subscribe, I think, Linda, to that. So again, if you need any clues about that afterwards, please come and speak to me, because we do post on the website education business opportunities as we become aware of them for you to apply for. Okay, so that's a kind of little bit about the kind of team that we are and how we work. I'm going to move on now a little bit more rapidly to talk about EdTech and some of the work that we've been doing around the sector specifically. But just before I move on, and I know that I'm bound to run out of time because that's just the way that things go, if anybody has any points or questions just in terms of our structure and organisation that they'd like to ask and the way that we operate, I'm very, very happy to take any questions now if anybody has any points. Okay, in which case then I'll move on then to just give you a little bit of a sense of why EdTech for us is important, why we think a show like this is important, and why we think education technology is a really important sector for us as a team, and why we're very, very keen indeed to support you. There's lots of profile associated with higher education programs. You know, we're just currently working with the University of Reading, who're just about to open a campus in Malaysia, for example. We're currently involved in a very large-scale English language program in Peru. We're talking to a Central American country about setting up a new vocational training system, etc., etc. But when we look around the world, there's an absolutely fantastic UK offer in terms of education technology. And one of the key points, I think, for the UK is how the UK sector is developing rapidly to be able to respond to the changes which are already taking place around the world, and where international organisations and governments are going to be looking for help and support and expertise. And of course it's in our contention, and I'm sure most of you would agree, that the UK is as well placed as anybody to be able to help governments actually respond to those kinds of challenges. So we kind of look at this in terms of those groupings which I've identified there in terms of administration, teaching, learning and assessment. And there's an absolutely terrific UK offer around all of those where we can help international governments and other buyers to achieve their objectives. And one of the great things as well is that everybody sees the UK as a really innovative place. And I think you've just got to walk around here for half an hour to see exactly what that means. And again, I've tried to set out on the slide here the kind of sort of stages and the kind of elements within the sector that put us in that very strong position. If I just kind of highlight in the second column here, I mean, I don't know if that's visible to everybody on the slide there, but essentially what we're saying there is that the world-leading number of EdTech startup companies in the UK relative to people who are our competitors. You look at an event like BET, where we are today, which is probably the global leader in terms of education technology, and we have visitors and buyers from all around the world. Sorry, I clicked there by mistake. So we believe that the UK EdTech offer is very strong indeed. We are currently in the process of briefing all of our teams around the world on the EdTech offer and how they can best present that to the governments in which they're embedded and with whom they're working. And we're therefore looking to develop a strong pipeline of education technology opportunities all around the world. So you'll be no doubt a mixture here within the audience, I think, of people who are well-experienced exporters, people who are perhaps just thinking about dipping your toe in the export market and wondering how to go about it, thinking which kind of countries would be the best ones to start thinking about for your own particular product or service. And again, that's part of the service that we can offer within UKTI Education to help you make those kind of decisions. And we can either talk to you directly. We've got other colleagues who are actually based regionally all around the UK. Robert, do you want to just put your hand up there? put your hand up, Robert. Yep, Robert is one of our international trade advisors based around the UK, specifically there to support you wherever you happen to be based. You don't need to be based in London to get UKTI help, support and access. But what we've kind of highlighted here are just some of the things that will be going through your mind when you think about whether exporting is right for you and where you might think about going with your export proposition. Now, we are always very keen indeed to try to develop long-term relationships internationally. Ours is a sector, as many, where you can't expect to just waltz in and pick up business immediately. It will be a process, I think, but I'd like to think that with the support of the team in London, our teams around the UK and the teams in our embassies and high commissions around the world, we can actually help you to make those relationships work. And also, of course, UKTI is an organisation which can potentially help you to actually get physically into some of the countries that you might be interested in. There are trade missions which take place from time to time to particular key markets. There can be support provided for some companies to actually take part in some of those missions. We work very, very closely indeed with quite a number of the representative bodies for the sector. BESA obviously is one, the British Educational Suppliers Association, EduTech right next door. We've got other partners who we work with. I've just seen somebody today from the Training Gateway Group. All of these are running missions also internationally, which we're very, very keen to support, so as to help you actually physically get into market to make those personal contacts.
Lord Young.
Okay, I'm not sure where that was coming from, but I don't think it was me. But anyway, so these are the kind of services that we can provide to actually help you
One side for a moment. Fantastic.
To actually get involved in that particular process. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so I'd like to leave just a few minutes for points and questions at the end. I'm going to be around for today. If any of you would like to have a conversation, be absolutely delighted to meet any of you. Our website on the top there is somewhere where you can just post any particular queries that you might have, or alternatively, I'm certainly not adverse to receiving emails from you. Nathaniel, my colleague, will be here later on today, and we do have a specific expert within our team in London for the EdTech sector, and that's Vipul, whose name you can see there. So Vipul is our kind of EdTech guru who works as part of the team specifically on this sector. So if you have any queries, then we'd be absolutely delighted to receive them. I've got two quick requests before I throw the floor open for questions. If there are any of you who are thinking about export, who are active anyway in the market, I'd be really very grateful indeed if you could just let us have your details at the end here. There'll be a couple of these which I'll pass around, or will be just at the front. So please let us know. And in addition to that, there is a form just sitting right next door to you, which we'd be very grateful if you could fill in to just give a sense of how valuable this kind of session is for you, and whether this is the kind of thing that you would think would be useful to other companies in the sector, or indeed for further exhibitions such as this.